Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Knock and Talk podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Angie.
And I'm Professor D.
Okay, so we're gonna have a little casual conversation today about art. We're not connoisseurs or anything like that, but
We still have our interpretations.
exactly.
We'd like to share them, obviously.
Okay, so let's start. Simple at the roots. Art itself, right? How would you define art?
I could talk about it. I can give you a long definition, but we like to keep it short and sweet. So I'll just say it's an expression of human creativity in a way that it's perceived to be some kind of perceived to be somewhat aesthetic. And it could be aesthetic just to you, or it could be considered an aesthetic to the culture, and that way you have like these two subsections.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm gonna comment on that, but first, I think anything is art to a degree. Okay, I think art is on a dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So I think things can be a little bit art or a lot art.
Yeah.
But I think most things have art to them. So basically, I think anything that is created is art,
Mm-hmm.
or at least somewhat art.
Well, I think whatever has any kind of wiggle room for creativity, right? So if someone has does some kind of action and willingly, I'm sorry, willingly add some kind of creative spin to it for his or her own benefit. Well, maybe not his or her own benefit, but just for the fun of it, right? Then that can be considered art. So that's what you were saying, is that the little variable of it can be a little art, it can be a little artistic, or it can be very artistic.
Yes, yeah, true. Just to specify more, these chairs we're sitting on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't normally think of them as art, and neither do I, right?
Well,
but I think they have a certain.
Well, right,
I think they're a little bit art.
There is still some kind of artistic appeal to them, because
Yes.
we obviously don't make all of our objects out of pure utility. Our
Yes,
clothes
yeah,
aren't just all bland.
They're all designed.
One color, yeah, designed to
Yeah.
be in some way creative, that would be appealing to us, and we see that with almost all of our objects that we have. Okay, maybe. No, even in government buildings, they still employ
anything you think.
some kind of architectural style, which is an art. And as we see with in Washington D.C., you have a lot of, I believe it's called neoclassical style of architecture. But I'd say I'd like to make one little observation with my prior knowledge, that but when the 70s came around, we had this period of blandness. I'm not an architecture genius, so I wouldn't know all the terms and everything, but let me give you an example. The Twin Towers. It's very I don't know. I guess bland. It's very I guess, okay. Obviously, it's rectangular prism, right?
Yeah.
But there's just a certain style to it that's I don't know. You just look at it. It's like, okay, that's 70s.
Regular. Okay.
Right, and I think you have that with every decade, but I can't really pinpoint what it is now. But that's just my aside on architecture. But we know that we have everyone has their in their life some kind of form of art that they are particularly attracted to. I mean, architecture is just one on the side, but for me, primarily, it's music and literature, I would say. How about you?
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I'm more on the literature side. That's more important to me, but we'll go into that. But first, I just want to clarify my position. I realized it probably wasn't that clear. I mean, I think anything is somewhat art at the point of creation if it's created by a conscious agent. So, not a tree, even though that came into existence.
Yeah.
It wasn't created as in by a creator.
I mean, we would just that's our subjective taste. Like, wow, that's complex. That's complex enough.
Right. Complexity doesn't mean it's art for me.
But to us, to nature, it's nothing. To
Of
nature,
course,
that's
yeah.
just how it exists. That's just But
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, but we see something in the natural world, and because of our feeble understandings, we are finite beings with finite understandings, that we perceive that to be complex, and we always like to see some kind of patterns, right? And for that we call it artistic or something, or it fulfills some kind of aesthetic. But anyway, for me, before I jump in, music can be really broken down into two subsets. I mean, in my opinion, it can be broken down to our form of expression in regards to speech, like when you analyze some kind of lyrics, it can be, I guess it can be, since that's a outlet for creativity still. You can still have some room for art there, or it could be more instrumental, expression, artistic expression. And so you were saying you're more literature based, so you don't care for much as for music.
I just think if the question is, what type of art do you think is the most important, I think it's literature, because because you can spread so many ideas that way. It's inspired so many other pieces of art. You know what I'm saying? Music doesn't have that same reputation or impact, I think.
You see, yeah, I can see your I can see your kind of approach to like you seek most of the things that you seek in life is fulfill some kind of purpose for a lot of the people, right? I'm a lot more egocentric. I'm a lot focused on how it impacts me, right? So I don't know if you remember back a few episodes. You were talking about how you want to learn things that you want to help people, right? So you're looking for utility there, right? Because literature can be an art form that can help people, right?
Yeah.
For me, I like music because it just positively impacts the way I see the world, right? When I walk down a street and I play music, right? The thing for me, how music works, it suggests something about your environment that you would exaggerate your focus on, and it would make you think different things than if you weren't playing music. And what you're effectively doing when you got your headphones in, or over the head headphones, or in the ear, either way, what you're effectively doing is removing one of your replacing one of your senses with what you're usually sensing with a completely another with music, right? Which is not, in real life you don't usually get that. So what happens? You kind of enter this other universe where this environment presents you with these melodies, with this music, and it's suggesting something. And look, I'm taking an example of me listening to classical music, and let's say it's very extravagant, it's grand. Maybe, I don't know, something like Tchaikovsky, right? It's like a lot of emotion there, right? So for me, the one word I'm thinking is discovery, like a discovery of something new in the environment, right? And since it's so grand, I have to appreciate it, right? So it could be it might not be something that's visually apparent, visually showing itself in the environment, but it's something that can imply it, and I'm thinking in my head, right? So I'm kind of juggling concepts around in my head, and then the music is suggesting that I value one over the other, right? And that would be the logical path there. But for literature, since you're more of the literature guy, would you like to explain your...
Well, let me comment on the music first.
Oh, okay. My bad.
I have okay, I'm not sure if this is entirely your experience, but I have this is what I experience, right? So if I'm walking down the street or something like that, and I have headphones on, right, and I put it like significantly loud or whatever, right, I feel like well, first off, I think music is very important. Like, it does help people, you know, through tough times or whatever, right? But when I listen to it and stuff like that, and I'm walking, or I'm taking a bus ride, I gotta travel somewhere for a while, I feel like I get the sense that it's like a soundtrack to what I'm doing or watching, you know? I feel like that goes with what you were saying. Like, this is what I got from what you said. You were listening to grandiose type of music, like classical, very much emotion about it. So that impacts the way you see the things you're looking at, right? Right, I have the same thing. I like that. Like, I start to feel good just like on the bus or just walking. Like, because I'm listening to a really good song and it fits like with what I'm looking at, you know?
You see, do you walk to the beat of the music? Do you do that? No, I can't do that either. I mean, I just can't do that. Despite me calling myself egocentric a few minutes ago, like, I just can't place myself like as if the environment has provided me with music to that for me to walk to this beat.
No, that's interesting.
When I was mentioning before that the environment this new universe that I imagine that is presenting me with this music. Those concepts that it makes me juggle around in my head and exaggerate focus on some of them, they're not about me. It's about external concepts that are, could be related to me, but they're not about me. So that's why that's why I'm so open to I'm so open to analyzing something or focusing on something when I'm presented with music and I'm present and they confront the concepts or some ideas I'm thinking about. But when I try to place myself in those concepts like directly, I just can't, like I have to turn off the music. It's like, no, too much focus on me.
Oh,
I don't like the spotlight, you know. So
okay.
that was my take, but on literature though. So
Wait. That's really interesting. On concepts, right?
mm,
And speaking about emotion in music, that's all entirely like society and upbringing based. Like in other cultures or whatever, I think they took different. I don't know. Seen this a long time ago, but I think I watched a video where it was like this study. They took different pieces of music, right, that we associate with sad and happy,
okay.
and they showed it to cultures that never heard that type of music, or something like that, and they didn't associate it with anything.
Well, of course.
So
I
I think
mean,
it's a learned.
it's all just social circumstances. We could.
But that's really
We.
interesting that we feel like we really feel those emotions when we hear like something like a classical sad piece, right,
Mm-hmm.
or an upbeat happy piece. But it's all association. It's not really.
I mean, just like I think one big movie, one blockbuster,
Yes,
right,
yes,
with
absolutely.
a soundtrack that has like some sad classical piece with some kind of sad scene, and that's it. For the next 10 years,
Yes.
that's what we
Or
associate
maybe
with sadness,
yes, or maybe a
right?
century or something. Yeah,
Or even a century. I'm sure there was some kind of cultural artifacts that have done things like that,
that's really interesting.
which are still prevalent even today. Um,
Okay, on
but
literature.
yes,
So I just think it has a way bigger impact. So when somebody asks me, "What do you think is the most important?" Right, I'm thinking, what kind of impact does it have? Like that's just how I approach the question. So I think that literature, out of any type of art, has the most impact. I don't know how to describe it.
impact on you, or impact on society.
I think its impact on, I guess society and the amount of people. Like,
Because as implied, I don't care much for society. I mean, look, I mean, I'm not. Okay, that's
no,
kind of
we care for society.
yeah, but like
We just don't care for.
I care. How I prioritize what art form that I consume more.
Oh right.
It's because it's based on how attractive it is to me, not how attractive or not how I perceive it to be attractive to society. How
Anyway,
beneficial it can be to society, not attractive.
it's not even beneficial. I'm just saying I think it has the largest impact, negative or positive. Like, because literature could have a negative impact. You could spread
Yeah.
harmful ideas, but I think it has the largest impact and largest potential for impact. Because like it's so effective, especially with the printing press. I don't know how many centuries we've had it, but with the printing press, right? It's so easy to transcribe and send out and translate different
Information.
ideas. Yeah, different ideas, information, history, facts, whatever it is, right? Opinions, political standings, anything, right? It's so easy to send that to somebody. You don't need to have an orator or anything like
Well,
that.
yeah,
You just read it,
and that's how it really was before.
Before what?
Before we had the paper, right? We're in kind of paper-like material. Is that
Oh.
we transferred information by talking to them.
Exactly.
And that's why you see like
And that's very limited.
in ancient yeah, of course, but that's why we see in ancient civilizations. I mean, talking was such a big deal, and I think I forgot one of those ancient philosophers. I think Aristotle. He never no Socrates. My bad. Socrates. He wasn't one to really actually write down his stuff. Plato wrote all the stuff for him. He was more of he was more about just like open discussion, talking, and it's actually kind of similar to music. Well, the way I described it before, music is a very individual experience, but before we could digitalize it, I suppose I don't know if that's the right term. It was music was a communal experience, especially in ancient civilizations, where people came together and maybe used some kind of instruments to make all this arrangement of sounds, and it warranted like a gathering. It warranted enjoying, dancing, all that stuff. But we see that technology has kind of separated that. But this is not about technology. This is about art. My bad.
Yes.
I was about to make another monologue of mine.
That's okay. They're very welcome on this podcast.
Trust me, you don't want this type of a long monologue.
Anyway, if we want to talk a little bit about technology, I still think like think about this is the extension or this is the application or extrapolation of what I was saying, right? So let's think about like things that are mass produced, like phones, right?
Okay.
I think this is a little bit art.
Oh yeah.
Even
Yeah,
though it's mass produced. So technology wise, like a microchip or a type of computer, I think it's a little bit art.
no, but I think that's with like I think. I think, of course, anything could be art because we could apply any kind of creativity to any objects that we have. It's standards that kind of limit where we can apply art. Standards. Okay, let me give you an example. Like work uniforms, right?
Oh yeah.
Stuff like that. And you might say, well, yeah, but you might give like some kind of cliche critique that you don't want to be a hippie and dress up like like this and this. But when we're given work uniforms, that is an agreement to wearing this uniform for this amount of time, and it's it might be considered bland or you might like it. It all depends on the company, but for the most part, all companies follow this like a similar pattern, right? Not too bland, but it still wants to liken to the customers in some way, but it can't be too expressive. So that's just one example. We have a lot of other stuff like that where our expression is constrained. I can give you, or I can give you a good example, which is a bit more, which applies a little bit more on the variation. It's something like school, standardized education. We see that with a growing bureaucracy, with more standardization, that it leaves less wiggle room for kids to go their own way, to branch out and learn their own things that they want to. And I think the main problem that has resulted from that is that you have created a generation of kids that they just don't branch out anymore. They just follow the standard. It's like a learned helplessness, I suppose.
No, that's interesting. You can kind of attribute that to if they're learning things, if they're forced to sit in classrooms, not even learning, right? If they're forced to sit in classrooms, being lectured to about subjects that they're not interested in, and you go to school to learn. Everybody knows that, right? They might associate learning with boring, or learning with unimportant, or something like that.
Yeah, and when you have such a like a strict, rigid schedule to schooling.
Yes, it like diminishes creativity.
Yeah, our as the kid grows up, their association with expression or pursuing some kind of learning objectives becomes really inhibited, and you would see that their I guess their intrinsic spirit to analyze things becomes dulled down, right, to a very low level. So what's the result of that? When someone who was kind of able to dissociate from these standards, see what they are, and branch out on their own, I suppose. I mean, some lucky folks like that are able to do that. That they apply analysis to a lot of a lot of things in a much deeper sense, and it becomes like a shock to a lot of people because they never were really accustomed to that level of analysis. But again, I branch out too much.
We went off on a little tangent, but it's okay.
Yes.
All right. So any kind of art besides music and literature?
I mean,
you want to mention?
I mean, obviously, like I like some paintings, but I'm not too crazy about it. I mean, we already have reality as what is, and I think there's enough art in it. True. I bouncing off the original point, there's still a lot of art in nature, even though it's not art, but I see it as art and I perceive it as art, and I consider it art to myself.
Wait. So in your definition of art, you would consider nature a part of that, or? Well, or do you think it's just art-like?
In art-like, yeah, that's.
Or would you call it art? It's okay.
No, I mean art. That means like it was expressed. It was purposely meant to express something.
It depends on how you define it,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, you could say like genes expressing themselves, but that's
different. That's not how you meant express.
Yeah, but that's just a natural process. I mean, a human willingly, willingly saying, I want to express this in this by this magnitude, right? That's them reasoning. I want to be creative in this way, but something that would have happened either way, no matter. I mean, no matter what was going to happen, that's not really art then, is it?
Yeah, objects in motion. Yeah. Anyway, that's interesting. To go back to another point, I thought about this earlier when in the beginning. When I took that class last semester that I was telling you about, the teacher said that in her opinion, um, because I know you said you can create art for an aesthetic purpose, but it can be just for yourself or it can be for
Yeah,
others.
or it
So,
can seem like it could seem like aesthetically pleasing to you or the culture.
right. She said that she thinks that art is basically conversational, necessarily. So, by that she meant if you paint something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not art until you show it to somebody. So let's say you paint a nice painting or a bad one, whatever, right? And you put it in your closet and leave it there. Nobody looks at it. She said it's not art. But I think it's art. I would disagree with that point, and I want to see what you think about that.
It's kind of applying a bit kind of like identity affirmation, like that we see in people in socialization to art, and I don't think that's true because I think that people always apply an imaginary audience that they sometimes don't even recognize that they did
That's interesting.
to
I agree.
everything they create. So when I know that when I write something or make a little short story or something, I imagine some kind of audience reading through it, and I would think of what would they pay attention to? Would they pay attention to the word hath that I use? That's a bit of an archaic use of English, but I was just feeling it, So there's just one little example. But yeah. So anyways, about this imaginary audience. So either way, to your maybe to other people, obviously the art didn't exist if they never seen it or never heard about it. But to you, you can either have a real audience or imaginary audience that sometimes you don't even realize. So
Do you think an audience is required for it to be art?
No, I'm okay. I said imaginary audience, but okay, but an existing audience. No, it doesn't have to be.
No, but
It doesn't. They don't have to be present to make it art.
all right, I agree with you. I think even if you take the conversational approach where art needs to be in between two things, like art needs to be some kind of message or communication, I think you can even say that an
It could be
artist.
a message to yourself.
I was going to say the same thing. I think if an artist, paints something and he looks at it or she,
Mhm.
right? If they look at their own work, I think it could still be
Because
conversational.
that's like making a concrete formalization of your thoughts and
Yes,
ideas.
yes. Or whatever you had in mind. If it's just something random, then
Yeah, like okay, we might dive into abstract art, and there's a lot of smoke going around, saying that it's not art, but I like to say that it's art. I might not be a big fan of it, but
I
it's
agree.
still an expression of something. It could
I
be
agree.
it could be an expression of emotion, right? Let's say there's like maybe the shapes in it are like very sharp, implying that the emotions are very strong or something. I don't know, it's something to that effect. But I think there's still room for some kind of expression, creativity. That's why it's still art.
I agree with you. I agree with you, right? But I don't think that expression is necessary. So,
Really?
yes, in art. So this might be on the fringe, but I think that even if you paint something, right, it doesn't mean anything to you. I think it's still art, and I think it could still mean something, right? Because you can take a piece of literature especially. This happens, I think. But you can take any piece of art, right, and interpret it in a certain way, and I think your interpretation is accurate if you can back it up. If you can say, I think this because this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you said is accurate, like as in you had a valid reason, I think your perception is accurate. That might seem kind of weird, just not giving an example, but let's take the example of an abstract painting, right, with very sharp edges and stuff like that.
Okay.
Let's say the artist, I painted it, right? I said I just wanted it to look that way. I didn't have anything intentions behind it. I just wanted to paint something one day, right? You come up and look at that painting, right? And you say, okay, in your head or something like that, or you say to me, you think that those jagged edges could have represented some kind of turmoil or strong emotion or something, right? I think your interpretation is right, even if the artist doesn't match up with
Wait,
yours.
but is expression representation? It doesn't have to represent anything. No.
I don't understand.
Like okay, if you perceive it to be nothing, right? That's
It's not nothing. You don't perceive it as nothing. You had no intention behind it.
But then you had to express it somehow. Like that was in your head, right?
All right, let me change it. Let's say I had a different interpretation than yours. So an artist paints something like a nice sunset, right?
Okay.
And for them that was a very sad memory they had or something like
Okay.
that, and that's what that represents. You see a sunset and that painting, you think it's very beautiful and you think it's a happy painting.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think either one of I don't think you're wrong, even though you didn't paint it. Right? I think your interpretation is right, but I think the artist's interpretation is also right because they can back it up. You see?
So you're saying that Hold on. So...
I'm saying that in artistic interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
If you interpret something, right? It's correct if you can back it up.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
even if it's not what was intended.
If you have some reasoning, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we all know that art is like very subjective, so obviously it doesn't always have to represent the same thing. But bouncing off the point I made before, when I said does expression necessarily imply representation? When we represent something, when we want to represent something, that's implying something exists beforehand, right? Either as a thought or like an actual object that we perceived, or maybe not even an object, but some kind of dynamic forces together, right? That it's not necessarily something that implies that we wanted to express originally. So it's really hard to translate all of our thoughts and ideas onto some concrete arrangement of objects or substances like painting or something, or I don't know, or music. I'm trying to think of a form of art. But so we know there's always some kind of gap that we have, and I think that's actually part that's like the essence of art, is that we never get our perfect our perfect idea of what we wanted to express onto paper or onto the
That's interesting.
out of the instruments, or onto the pages.
Okay, so I think that concludes our conversation about art. If you guys like this, leave a comment, contribute to the conversation. Let us know if you want us to tackle the subject again.
Yeah.
Any last words, Professor?
Follow Friendly Bookshelf on Instagram.
Yes, follow Friendly Bookshelf.
And let's continue the discussion in the comments if you feel like it. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.